country that are on. We need to be filling up these phone lines and shutting it down, not only in Kentucky, but around the country. We want you to be engaged. Go get somebody, tell them to join in. We also have, and I want you to stay on, because we've got ways you can get involved, in peer texting and calling, helping to protect this vote, helping to maximize getting the vote out. We know we have to turn this vote out. Our campaign is clear that what we are for in terms of health care, for in terms of living wages, for in terms of voting rights, and we're against those things and those that would try to undermine those things. And it's just too much lying going on, y'all. Too much lying, too much dying. And we got to do some more trying to change this situation and change what's going on. There's too much pain and too much hurt. Too many people who are sick, too many people who are sad, and it doesn't have to be this way. And we cannot be silent anymore. This is no time to be straddling the fence. This is no time to be timid. This is no time to be afraid. This is the time to have guts, to have backbone, to have strength, to have commitment. In fact, this is the time to sing and to work and to vote and to march with the clear attitude, ain't gonna let nobody turn us around.
Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. No, turn me around. No, turn me around. Gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, walking on the freedom line. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. No, turn me around. No. Turn me around. Gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, walking up the freedom land. Ain't gonna let no governor turn me around. No, turn me around. No, turn me around. Gonna let no governor turn me around. I'm gonna keep on keep on talking, walking up the freedom land. Ain't gonna let no jailhouse turn me around. No, turn me around. No, turn me around. Gonna let no jailhouse turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, walking up the freedom land. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. No, turn me around. No, turn me around. Gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, walking up to freedom land. I ain't gonna let no closed door turn me around. No, turn me around. No, turn me around. Gonna let no closed door turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, walking up to freedom land.
And right there, that's the voice of Miss Yara Allen, the National Theomusicologist for the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival and repairs of the breach. And right beside her in that screen was Bob Zellner, one of the great civil rights leaders of our time, a white guy whose people were formerly in the Klan and who came out of that movement, who was a part of transformation in the 60s. And Bob is still around. Bob was beaten and jailed numerous times, but he refused to let anybody turn him around. And so much we in the days in which we live. Before we get to my dear sister Liz, Laura, there are people out there that want to know, how can I get in this fight? I've been singing and I've been marching, but I need to know, how can I get people to the polls? How can I help move people to the polls? Laura, would you talk to us, Laura Ashton, about how people can get involved?
Yes, Reverend Barber, I can. Right now, you can go to poorpeoplescampaign.org/voting. and click phone and text bank with the Poor People's Campaign. We are reaching out to poor and low income infrequent voters in 8 target states, 8 states where we know that their vote can have the biggest impact, to make sure that we are impacting this election and therefore impacting the political landscape in this country and making our demands more possible. Right now, go to poorpeoplescampaign.org/voting and get involved.
And Laurel, I understand that there are probably thousands of people out there who are people of faith. I understand that Reverend Cashmere is here with us today to talk about how people of faith, how clergy, regardless of your faith tradition, can be involved and engaged in using their position, their pulpits, their various means to, in fact, protect this democracy, but also push people to do more, mobilizing, organizing, registering, educating people to vote. Reverend Cashmere, talk to us about how people can be involved.
Thank you, Bishop. We're calling on people of all faiths to join our More Faithful Month. And we're asking during this More Faithful Month for each person to reach 10 people. It's called the Each Reach 10 Prophetic Pledge. So if you are calling people, if you're texting people, if you're sending postcards to people, and if you send them out to 10 people, you're part of the Prophetic Pledge. And we want you to sign up with our More Faithful Month. And not only that, we want to hear from you to lift up the prophetic message. Whether you are a faith leader of a congregation or folks that feel strongly about what's happening, we want to hear from you. Send us a recording about what does it mean to do more as a person of faith. So join us for the More Faithful Month.
Yeah. And so you can get involved. You heard Laura Ashton. There are ways you can do peer-to-peer texting, calling. You can help us push this vote out. We're trying to call somewhere in the neighborhood of a couple of million people in 8 states to help move them to the polls. We're doing it in conjunction with others. Got over 200 partners that are also engaged in various ways, in addition to our more than 43 state coordinating committees around this country. Y'all, when you get in the streets, you not only must get in the streets, but you must be organized. You must be willing to not only say things with your mouth, but to have a plan of attack, a strategy and engagement. So we can do that. You hear Reverend Cass, people of faith. There are ways that you can be involved. All you got to do is go to the website. And LaMonique with our media team is on, and I know she wanted to say something to us as well. LaMonique?
Absolutely. Thank you, Reverend Barber. We wanted to make sure that we know that the people who are listening here are people who vote. So when you go out to vote, make sure that you are telling your stories. We want to hear them. We want to know your voting stories. And please tag us. Our hashtag is Poor People's Campaign, or you can tag us on Instagram at Poor People's Campaign. And we want to hear your stories. We want to see you on IG stories. We want to see you on Facebook.
Thank you so much, LaMonique. And that's right. The more people see, we put a face on the problem. Now we want to put a face on the power. How about that? You like that? We put a face on the problem. We want to put a face on the power. We want people of faith to engage. As Reverend Brown has said, we want all of you to be engaged. This campaign is about having, not only doing moral analysis, but having moral action and moral articulation and having a strategy to do. You have to deal with systemic evils with strategies for transformation. And I want to thank all 3 of you for what you're doing and leading. Continue. Everything they said is up on the screen. You know exactly where to go. Tell some other people to come join you right now as we are in this Moral Monday today, as we're challenging the meanness, mayhem, and the misery created by Mitch McConnell and his folk in the United States Senate, who are more interested in stacking the courts than they are giving stimulus and protecting their lives and the health of people. And we are going to make our voices heard on their phones, but also at the ballot box. Yes, we will. Now, y'all know we always got Brother Rob sitting in the cut. You know, when you do this kind of New Jack City DJ kind of Moral Monday, you got to always have somebody in the cut just in case, not only running the technology, but ready to take over at any time. So we've got him right there. And he's going to have a few words to say to you as we move forward. But right now, we want to hear from our sister leader, our shero, We know who she is, the Reverend Dr. Liz Theo Harris. You know, if y'all look at her real careful, her eyes are set today. She ain't playing, y'all. She is about sick of this line and about sick of all this craziness. And she is on fire, and she's calling people out. And you know, she does it with such a voice of credibility. So Reverend Liz, all over the country, folk want to hear from you now on this Moral Monday about why they should be engaged.
Well, thanks so much, Reverend Barber, and thanks everybody for tuning in and turning out. We do need people to be making those calls, shutting down the phone lines at our Senate offices, at McConnell's office, because we do need our voices to be heard, and we know that they are being heard and that they're going to be heard today, throughout the weekend, and for sure on Election Day and all the early voting leading up to it. As folks probably saw last week, more than 8 million people have become poor in this pandemic. And that was on top of the 140 million people who are already poor and low income. That's on top of you know, a growing sections of people who are one fire, one storm, one healthcare crisis, one job loss from deep poverty. And this is in the richest country in human history. This is with a Senate that has the means, that has the power to make it all better, to make it all okay, to have health care for everyone, to have living wage jobs for everyone, for protecting the votes of everyone. And so that's why we got to be here today. That's why we got to be out there organizing every day, because so many of our people are hurting. So many people of our people are dying, and we can't have it. I'm really excited about all the folk that are from around the country that are joining us today, because we have powerful leaders, heroes and heroines that are really rising up, organizing, mobilizing, registering, and educating people for a movement who are going to push, organize until we win all of our demands, and push on this Senate, and push on all of our elected leadership, and push on our candidates to actually make sure that the issues and demands that we have are front and center. We know that who has the power to make things right in this country is when people who are impacted band together and organize, and that's what we're doing in this Poor People's Campaign. If you're not already a part of our campaign, please join, and surely please connect with that bit.ly link at the top of the screen and make those calls. Make those calls to all of our elected officials, to the folks in the Senate who have the power, have the means to make it right, have the power to make sure that everybody has health care, have the money to make sure that everyone has a just stimulus, that people have cash on hand, have money in their pockets, and don't have to be worrying about their rent, don't have to be worrying about how they're going to keep their lights on and their water on in a pandemic. These are not issues that we should be dealing with, and yet we are today. And so I thank you for Reverend Barber and everyone for joining us, because we're going to make sure that we make our voices heard, because as Ms. Yari Allen has taught us, somebody's been hurting our people. It's gone on far too long, and we won't be silent.
Liz, I like exactly what you said. They have the power. It is not beyond their reach. We know they don't even have to raise taxes. All they have to do is just do what's right. Even if you had to raise taxes, it's okay. You know, I was looking at an economist the other day that says we shouldn't even be afraid of deficits in a country where we make our own money. Deficits for the furtherment of the society is good. Now, if you're just having deficits because you're giving tax cuts to the wealthy and putting more money in military, that's foolishness. But if you have a deficit because you build say an interstate system, or deficits because you build public colleges, or deficits because you engage in GI bills, things that we all did in the past, those deficits actually pay out dividends. They come back. And so today we could have everything. You said everything. We want people to get this. None of this has to be. Everything we see now is man created. Even the way in which this pandemic is hurting us is man created. The fact that we're talking about stacking the Supreme Court and not passing a stimulus, all of that is created by politicians, by human beings, by the president, by Mitch McConnell. It does not have to be. I want you to hear what Reverend Dr. Liz said. But not only does it not have to be, we have the power to change it. want everybody on this call to just write down 140, and every chance you get, say, we are 140 million. We are not a little small group of people. It's sad to say that there are 140 million poor and low wealth people in this country, but since there are, then we ought to make our voices heard. And since we are 1/3 of the voting population, or at least 30%, almost a third of the voting population, and since there are 64 million of us that can vote and participate, and that's not even including moral leaders and advocates, 64 million, we ought to say that we are 64 million. We are not 64,000. We are not 640,000. We are 64 million, and it's past time that we are not heard. Maybe they have not been calling our name, so our campaign, first we brought that up. Now what we're saying is make them hear you. Make them call your name. How do you do that? You engage. Today, get on these calls, shut down these phone lines. Then this evening, go to vote, register people to vote if they can still register, like in our state where you can register and vote the same day. But we need a massive, massive, massive turnout. This country has never seen 75% of poor and low wealth people vote and vote around an agenda. If it did, you could see fundamental shifting. Now, I do want to do one thing before we go. I want to get Lamonique and Reverend Kaz and Rob and Laura, because I got a quiz for Rob, and I want to ask you, you all on, can y'all hear me? Before I go to those two sisters in Kentucky, I want to ask you something. And Liz, I want you to go ahead and pray, because we probably gonna make somebody curse in a minute, but that's all right. Sometimes you need to curse so you can get yourself together and understand what time it is. So Lamonique,
Yes,
you heard
sir.
Reverend Liz say 8 million people. How many people a day is that have gone into poverty? Quick, first number comes to your head. How many?
I've been working with 700 people a day dying.
Okay, 700 people a day dying. That's before the 8 million.
That was before COVID. That was before.
Okay, right. Now, how many, Laura, how many people that fell into poverty since May? 8 million is the number. How many a day?
I don't know, Reverend Barbara. That's not my strong suit, but I'm
that
looking
ain't your
forward
strong
to
suit,
learning.
okay? Come on here, Reverend Casimir. Maybe you're an economist and a preacher. You got, and don't you go to your calculator. Don't try to. I see you cheating over there. You slick out there in California. I said in your head, not the calculator. What? Come on, talk to me. What do you think? Give me a number.
1,000.
1,000 a day. Okay. Rob, give me a number.
19,185 and 2/4.
Okay, that's better than that 1,000 that Casimir threw out there. But anyway, 53,333.333. Damn, y'all.
Damn.
That's what we're talking about.
Damn.
When you have a Senate that doesn't act. That's what we're talking about when you have a president that is more engaged in lying than lifting people. 53,333 people a day, because that's 150. 8 million divided by 150. How did I get that number? May, June, July, August, September, 30 days in a month. 5 times 30, 150. 150, 8 million divided by 150. That's where we are, y'all, out there. That's where we are, those of you listening tomorrow Monday. And that's why you cannot stand down. That's why you got to get everybody you know to be engaged. That's why you got to talk to all your family members and anybody you know. This is not the time to stand down. It is the time to stand up. And there are two sisters that will stand up anywhere, anytime. I love them for it. Pam McMichael and Tana Fogel from Kentucky. They got all this started. You know, I thought I was through it tomorrow Monday, but then they said, let's do it, because Kentucky said we needed to call out Mitch McConnell, and it has spread all across the nation. We love you guys.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know that's kind of sobering, but you know, I've been in that kind of mood lately as a preacher. You know, it's just, we got to tell folk the truth, Tyler. 53,333.333 people have fallen into poverty every day since May. What do you think we ought to be doing about that, Tom?
I think Pam needs to talk because I'm speechless right now. I'm really mad and I'm really angry. I didn't even know this total here, but I think there should be some advertisement around these totals. Just like when the candidates are running, they have all of these commercials. We should start flashing these numbers up there, and then some kind of public announcement. Do you know what these numbers stand for? Because that's bullshit. 53,000 plus a day. Okay, Kentucky, listen, I voted this morning and I need you. There is no way that this can happen. I'm an impacted person. I fell under the mass incarceration piece. I'm working with another group of people who are in prisons for child support. And then when they filed for the stimulus money, Reverend Barbara, Reverend Liz, and everybody that's on here to lift us up and to help us, the stimulus money goes to back child support. So they still can't even utilize some of that money to help themselves move up a little bit out of poverty. I remember when we first started this thing, they said we was down here partying with that stimulus money. Bullshit. Mitch McConnell, get your ass in gear. You 36 years. We are fed up. Kentucky, I need you to get to the polls. We were given our voting rights back. 170,000 Kentuckians that have felonies in their past. I need you get out and go vote. We will come and pick you up. We will do some kind of social distancing, sit in the back of the car, but we'll get you to the polls. We need you. Get on the line, call Mitch McConnell's office right now. 53,000 people a day are dying. What if there's somebody in your family? Get out and vote.
Exactly
Get out and vote.
Exactly right, Tom. And you know, when you say that, when people are languishing in poverty, they may not die like tomorrow, but they are dying because of all that they don't have. And it doesn't have to be, y'all. And yes, we need to have a righteous indignation. Dr. King even called it an eternal hatred, eternal dislike for injustice. And I'm where Jesus is now. Jesus damned the fig tree when the fig tree was putting on and acting like it was a tree and not producing any fruit. America, you acting like you're a nation that believes in justice for all, but what your politicians are doing, they are not producing fruit. And we need the fruit of our votes to move, and the fruit of our actions. And if it sends them home, let them go home. Put somebody else in so that we can move in a direction. But we cannot sit by while 53,333.33 people every day for the last 6 months have fallen into poverty. Pam?
Reverend Barber, I'm also struggling for my words after hearing that number. Thank you. I hate living in a society that throws so many people away. I'm thankful to be in this movement with you and Reverend Liz and all the people on this call and across the country. There's so many people who, I come from farming family and factory work. My mother lost her health way too soon, and we lost her way too soon from damage to her health in the factory. I've just been thinking about her a lot today because so many people sit in those Senate chairs that don't care at all about working people, don't care at all about essential workers, don't care at all, and care only about their rich friends and get away with it. And I think about those 53,000 plus. I think about the people we have lost, will continue to use, and just so how true that is. There's no way to go back to normal. Just to build this together, a system that makes it impossible to win and then blames you for not winning is really evil, and it's just pure evil. And we call your senator, call McConnell's office, call that number on your screen, call your own senators, call your friends to get them to call. Let's lift each other up, move forward together, not one step back, and just thankful to be part of this work with you.
You know, Pam, I don't know what I would do. I surely don't know what a lot of people have said if we didn't have a Poor People's Campaign right now in this moment. It is needed more than ever, both in this moment and beyond. And maybe the 3 years we've been working together, Liz, the 20 years you've been working with all rehearsal, for a moment we didn't know what's coming, but the divine knew it was coming. Maybe this is the very moment that we also say that 53,000 who have been moved into poverty every day, and that 140 million and that 64 million, that guess what? We have the power to change some things. The poor and low wealth people in Kentucky have the power to adjust the power that Mitch McConnell has. You have the power to determine where he is and where he isn't. And it's the same way all over this country. Poor and low wealth people now, I was telling somebody today, as harsh as this moment is, there is this scripture in the Bible that says the day comes when the stone that the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. And then the next verse says, and this is the Lord's doing. Yeah. That there come these moments that are dark moments, but you see light, because the rejected also then in their rejection actually become a power force, right? A power force for a new way and a new world and a new nation. And so I pray that we have the kind of mourning that turns us to action. See, there is a mourning where you just say, there's nothing I can do. There's another mourning where, you know, as my grandmama used to say, boy, you done messed around and made me cry. Now, those of you on this call, you need to understand, I'm not suggesting the white sisters don't know that, but in my culture, when a black woman said, boy, you done messed around and made me cry, that does not mean that she's not gonna fight you. That means, uh-oh, it's on. And it really is time for being on time. In church sometimes, you know what we say, I ain't gonna wait. If I gotta go through this, I ain't gonna waste it. I'm gonna get something. If I gotta go through this, I'm getting something coming through this. That's right. And that's where we are right now. And you know, we've got some people on the line because we're all over. I know Rob is pushing me. You know, we got folk today from North Carolina, from Kentucky, from Maine, from Mississippi. We got some Hollywood actors on the line today. You know, we even got somebody that used to be on the West Wing, and I'm hoping that's a prophetic sign that the West Wing gonna change too. Glory, hallelujah. We got Bradley Whitford on the line. We got folk from Pennsylvania. We got folk from Texas. And so we're gonna start letting some of these folk come on, and they've got two minutes or so to really kind of share with folk why you should be. Look on the screen. It tells you exactly what to do, how you can shut these phone lines down, these senators, especially McConnell. It also is the line up there, how you can hook up, how you can make sure you're engaged in helping people vote, making sure you're voting, so forth and so on. But we're gonna start with Audrey Trout out of Maine. Audrey Trout. And Audrey, we want you to tell your story. And then right after you is going to be Joyce Johnson out of North Carolina. And then right after that, it's going to be Sarah Catherine Stout Whiteman from Mississippi. And each of y'all got 2 to 3 minutes. But we want you to say from your space why it is that people need to challenge the misery, the meanness, the madness of McConnell and his crew in the Senate, why we need to shut these phones down, why they need to hear from us about trying to stack the court rather than pass a just stimulus, and why we, from your perspective, people need to be engaged and vote like their very lives depend upon it, because they do. So Audrey, Joyce, Sarah, there's a clock on the screen, I believe, and it kind of tells you when you get to 2.5 minutes. I don't want to interrupt you, but bring it. I mean, whatever you have to say in your own words, come on, talk to the whole nation. Thousands and thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people eventually see this, so they need to hear from you.
Thank you, Reverend Barber. A good Moral Monday to you all. I'm a singer-songwriter, but like most singer-songwriters, I haven't gone platinum yet, and so I need to have a real job with real money. And before the before COVID, I was bartending, and since COVID halted that work, I've gone on to unemployment for the first time in my life. Initially, I was receiving the standard unemployment and the extra $500 in the COVID-related unemployment. But since that came to a halt also, I get $186 a week, which in my head sounds like that should last a week, but it does not at all. It's about 2 trips to the grocery store, some gas in your tank, and maybe a phone payment. And I'm lucky. I have people such as my parents who are helping to support my daughter and I right now, and most people don't have that. It's stressful.
Did you say it was your first time? I think people need to know that. There are a lot of people who are first time. Okay.
First time on unemployment, yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay, all right.
Yeah. It's stressful. It's depressing. It hurts your pride. It hurts your ego, which is kind of the same thing. Does nothing for one's anxiety, I'll tell you that. And it limits life so much, even further than it was already from the pandemic, like it affects us all. And we're not getting another stimulus passed. And, you know, you would think that they were trying to pass, I don't know, the world's, you know, biggest kidney stone or something, you know, come on, give me a break. It's ridiculous. But they can push through a Supreme Court, you know, nomination. They've got time for that. It makes me sick, angry, and we should all be sick and angry. Those of us who know what's going on cannot be complacent or complicit. Those of us who do not know need to know. And those of us that don't want to know need a bucket of morality dumped on them and wake the hell up. And this is just one of the items on the laundry list of injustices, why the Poor People's Campaign is holding our elected officials accountable, and why we are on the campaign here in Maine. These people work for you and me. Okay, you and me.
That's right. That's
not
right.
The other way around. And this is why we all must do more. And Reverend Barber, since they fear us, let's make that feel real.
Yeah, that's right. If somebody keeps messing with you and they keep suppressing your right, your vote, that shows that they at least have a basic fear of your power. So since they believe it, they make it real. Show it to them. That's really what we have to do. This is the time for getting up and pushing back. And if folk got time for Supreme Court justice and they don't have time for stimulus, maybe after they do what they're going to do, they need to have a whole lot of time. Do whatever they want to, but they don't need to be taking time in office messing with us when we're trying to move ahead and we're trying to live. We can give them some time to do, some time out, time away, time off. We can do a lot of time, but we don't need them in our time. Thank you so much. And for the members of the media, I want you to hear, look at the diversity that we're talking about. The sister said, this is my first time on unemployment. Look at who, while all this hearing over one lady, and yet all of these other women and men and children who are suffering, and they can't even move the stimulus. By the way, McConnell says he's not going to pass anything unless it protects the corporation that didn't protect their people. That's what the real holdup is. He says he wants liability, and he can't get that. He's not going to pass anything. Joyce, I know you're in North Carolina. Thank you, Aubrey. Thank you so much. I know you're in North Carolina. Talk to us today and talk to folk all over the nation. And then Sarah, you can follow right after her.
Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you so much, Reverend Barbara and Dr. Liz, for having this call once again. As many of you know, the Marl Mondays were birthed out of North Carolina, but really they were birthed out of what all of us have been doing over the years, striving toward our freedom, toward the justice, toward the abundant life that God has promised us and is helping us deliver even through this COVID time. I'm proud to announce that as of 1:30 today, that over 1 million people have already voted, cast their ballots in North Carolina. There are over 7 million people who are registered to vote, but we are helping to drive people toward those polls. And one thing I want to share with the sister who just spoke, we are together. we are together, and we this is good to look one another in the face. And yes, it's hard, but your journey is my journey. And that's something that we have been able to learn or relearn in North Carolina, that when we stand together, we can do many things. Together, we can actually move mountains. I'm talking mountains. We can move mountains, but alone, we can't move anything at all. But we've been convinced that our problems are our individual problems. And that's one thing that I think that we have learned and are learning over and over in North Carolina, that we have got to walk together to make that difference. So you might recall that early voting was a victory that the people won in North Carolina and have had to fight for it day after day, but people are using it. I was pleased to ride around the last few days to just the different polling places, and people are getting out there and voting. We had the first souls to the polls Sunday voting yesterday. People are getting out and voting. That's because the people fought for it, and we are still holding on to it. We have, of course, as all of you have said, we're doing phone banking, we're texting, we're calling, people are writing things on the streets. Folk are still doing canvassing, but all the while, because we value our lives and those of our brothers and sisters, we're doing it safely, which means even as we pass out the nonpartisan voter guides, we're also passing out face masks, we're passing out gloves, we're passing out information about how to keep yourself safe. When we're having these activities, we're sharing food, not to tell you to bribe you to vote, but knowing that you need food, you need things because you cannot get them during this period. We are directing you to where you can get free COVID testing, or maybe there's even a free COVID testing event happening right as we have been doing this registering and getting people out to vote. On Saturday, the young people with whom we're working had an expungement clinic right near a large voting site that's mainly in the Black and Brown community, and young people who have carried this burden of a felon, which impacts them economically, impacts their access to housing, to medical care and all that. So they got that information. We're told, you need to go and vote because your vote, your voice makes a difference. And you have to teach people why voting is important, because there's been so much falseness out here on the media, particularly the social media, that has confused people. So some of us have come together, particularly us Black and Brown women, have come together across the state and said, just like Fannie Lou Hamer did, just like Dolores Horter is still doing, just like Ella Baker has done, we the women have got to add our voices in a particular way to bring our communities out. And that has been quite effective. We meet every Thursday. You're invited to come. It's not restricted by Zoom. And folk are teaching each other, people who've never done this work, who just like that sister who never faced unemployment, now understanding, I've got to get out here and work with my sisters and brothers so as to do this work. And the Poor People's Campaign is so vital. Sometimes I think those of us who are part of it don't fully appreciate how important it is. Mm-hmm. But I tell you, being able to be connected throughout these United States and understand that people in Kentucky, which is where McConnell's from, people in Texas, people in California, in New York, in Virginia, my home state, that people are mobilizing, organizing, have registered, and they are, we educating, empowering our people.
That's right.
Hopeful. So don't give up that power of voice. And voting is one of those voices that you have. So I urge people to do whatever you know you need to do in the grocery store line, in the food giveaway line, or whatever like that. Encourage people to get out and vote, because as John Lewis said, we've got to vote, and we can't give up any power that we have, because we're fighting literally for our lives. Not just Joyce, our lives, but our lives more abundantly. And we can do it. And the Poor People's Campaign is a vehicle that we need today. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next gathering.
Joyce, I'm going to steal that from you. I'm going to give you the credit. But you just said something that capitalizes a whole lot of stuff. We can't give up any of our power. I want everybody to hear that. When folks say, well, voting this way, listen, when you fighting power that's unjust, whatever power God gives you that's just and righteous and so forth, you don't give up any of that power. That's why we say now we are 64 million poor and low wealth people that can vote. That power must be activated. That voice must be spoken. It's not the only way we speak, but we have to speak with every voice we have. And Joyce, that for you to say that today on this call is very important for folk to hear that. And I want to thank you for lifting that up today. God bless you from Greensboro. Sarah, Catherine, Stout, Whitman, I got it all in, Sarah.
Sorry.
No,
Okay.
I love it. I love it.
All right. I'm a little nervous. I'm not really used to doing like public type speaking, but I'm with the Mississippi Poor People's Campaign. And the reason I got involved was because honestly, probably before January, I really could care less about politics. Like for some, I was either working, I have 3 children, I'm married. It was something that I really just didn't have time for, I thought. And then when COVID hit, we're a working class family from Mississippi. We're like so many other people in Mississippi. We basically live paycheck to paycheck. Every now and again, we were able to save a little bit of money and kind of put it away into a savings account. But when COVID hit, before we even had testing in Mississippi, my husband was hospitalized, and he's the breadwinner in our family. So for almost 6 days, he was in the hospital. He was almost intubated twice. He had to have an emergency surgery to remove his tonsils, which ended up swelling. He had infectious disease doctors coming in. He had blood drawn all the time. He was on strong antibiotics. I mean, it was intense. So for about 3 weeks, we knew he was not going to be able to return to work. So it did not take us long to even go through our savings. So by the time he even recovered, he had no job to return to. My husband does a lot of installation work as far as like office furniture. He works in hospitals, things like that. Everything was shut down. So there was no work. I wasn't working at the time either because childcare is just so expensive. It wasn't worth it for me to be serving or bartending at that time to pay to go to work. That's essentially what I was doing at one point. So it really opened my eyes because it put me in a position where I felt helpless. I felt hopeless. I thought I was going to lose my truck. I didn't know how I was going to feed my kids. And I decided right then and there that it was very important that I needed to speak up, speak out, start getting more people involved, start talking to my friends, my neighbors, my family that were not registered to vote, who were just like me, who did not care about voting, and say, hey, we're hurting ourselves. We need to speak up and we need to make these people work for us. They are there to do a job and they are not doing it properly. And, we are the people that keep society running. We are the servers. We are the workers. We are the builders. We bring you your food. We deliver your groceries. I mean, without us, things would collapse. Like I recently saw something I thought was really interesting that said, we didn't really have a shutdown. Just some people were able to stay at home while other people brought them the things that they needed.
Exactly.
That really hit me because, it made me feel for a lot. I got my head out of the sand is what I did, I guess.
Let's say that. Let's make sure we get that because that we didn't really have a shutdown. Some folk got the privilege of staying home and letting other people bring them and do for them and care for them.
Right.
And you know what's interesting about that, Sarah? Prior to COVID, they called them service workers. Once COVID hit, people changed the name to call them essential. Okay, we're going to make you feel good with a name, but we're not going to do right by you and give you the things you need.
Exactly.
You need. Take about another 20 seconds. I've got about 6 more people, but your voice is so important. Don't you come from the state where the senator said something about this Supreme Court justice? She was going up there with her packed and loaded or some kind of craziness.
Oh, yeah, that's Cindy Hyde-Smith. Uh-huh. Yeah, she sure did. But I also, another thing that I wanted to highlight was, besides, the essential workers that are struggling to get to work, period, because gas, they have to have gas in their vehicles, they have to pay people to watch their children if they have a job to go to. If they're not like us that are trying to survive on the $200 a week unemployment that my husband is getting, depression, anxiety, and drug overdoses are at an all-time high. I struggle with depression, and I was speaking to my counselor about it. And that was one thing that really also stuck with me here this past week, was realizing it's one layer on top of another on top of another. And there's so many of us that feel like we just can't get above it. But I feel like if we all stick together, and we get out and we vote and we link arms, then we can make a change. And I feel like we can get people in power that are going to do stuff for the people. And that's what we need to get back to doing, is for the people.
Yeah. And when you say that about even the depression and the movement, when people were hurt and broken in the past, they knew that sometimes it is in the fight back that you get lifted up. The human spirit, sometimes when something is weighing you down, you have to choose to stand up to. That's what we do. But you choose to stand up within a community. And that's what the Poor People's Campaign is about. It's a community. And people are telling me all the time, and telling Liz, I'm so glad if we had to be born, we're born now. And if we had to be born and COVID and these things were hit and poverty was hit, we had this community, that we can, I think Yara said, I know justice is coming soon, but justice comes when we pray on, when we march on, and when we fight on. And Mississippi is another side of that, because I understand that Senate race in Mississippi is so tight, and nobody ever thought, that an African-American man running for the Senate against somebody like, what was her name, Cindy Hyde-Smith. Cindy Hyde-Smith, they didn't even think it would be anywhere. I think it's like within a point or less than a point now. That's huge. And guess what? In Mississippi, if something like 7 to 9% of poor and low-wealth people vote who did not vote the last time, they can fundamentally shift who sits in the United States Senate and who sits in the White House. And so the South is rising, but it's rising with people like you and so many others. And so I want us to know the power that we have, We will not give in. We will stand up. And Sarah, look, don't you ever apologize for your whole name. It's beautiful. And we thank God for it. Thank God for it. Tell your husband we said hello, and we're glad that he was able to make it through and continue to fight. And we're all family now. I want to take thank you. I want to take a little flip. I know Rob is looking at me, and Leonard Riley and Shelby Fredenbacher are going to come right back at you. But I want to get for 2 minutes in, because we do have a time. We may go a little bit over 4:30. But Alicia Milano, who's a dear artist and activist, y'all know her from the screen. And then Bradley Whitford. I just want the two of you all to come on back to back, because you all got tremendous followings, and calling on your people to go to that screen, to make those calls into McConnell and shut down those lines and call people, and then get people registered and get people calling and get people texting and moving this vote out all over the country. Remember, there are 15 states in this country right now, not tomorrow, not the next day, 15 in this country where if just 1 to 19% of poor and low wealth people vote. Liz has done the numbers. She's double checked them twice. And it says poor and low wealth people can fundamentally shift the balance of power in this country. Alicia, how you doing? Thank you for your tweets and direct mail. Talk to us a little bit.
Of course. Thank you so much for this incredible opportunity, and for all of the work that you do and everyone on this call does every week to ensure that we are taking care of each other. And I don't need to tell you this, but America is in crisis. And there's a public health crisis, which has left 215, thousand, I think that's what we're at now, of our fellow Americans dead. And there's an economic crisis, which has left tens of millions out of work. People are lining up for hours at food banks and wondering where they're going to sleep and how they're going to make rent. And 14 million children in this country are not getting enough food to eat, which is, I'm sorry, disgusting. And there's a moral crisis, which has left our nation reeling in anguish and anger over systemic racism. And yet at this very moment, at this defining moment in our history, when we so desperately need leaders to bring us together and to pass a bill to help people who are struggling, we have leaders who are in charge, who are more concerned with their own self-interests. And I need everyone who is watching to call their senators to demand that they pass a real relief bill and protect the Supreme Court. Because look, we're looking at healthcare is at risk, women's rights, immigrant rights, LGBTQ rights. And again, the numbers are staggering. And I know you were talking about before how there are 53,000 people who are falling into poverty every single day.
Since May.
Yeah, more than 10% of Americans live with food insecurity, and that's more than 40 million people in nearly 15 million households. And again, children remain the poorest age group in America. Nearly 1 in 6 kids live in poverty.
That's right.
Also, 5.5 million seniors are living in hunger. And of course, due to systemic racism, Blacks and Latinos are significantly more food insecure than both foreign and native born whites. So I so appreciate you using your platform and handing it off to me. And I just want to say we need an America where everyone earns enough money to afford rent, put food on the table, and set aside some savings for a rainy day, so that everyone can fulfill their dream of happiness and a happily ever after. And we need an America where people don't perpetuate these injustices of our past, but continue to march forward every single day. I almost just cursed. I'm sorry for that. More perfect.
It's been that kind of day.
Yeah, union. So please, everybody who's watching right now, please call your senators, demand that they pass a relief bill, demand that they protect the Supreme Court. And we need you to be safe, but we need you to vote. That's right. It is the most important thing that we could all do right now, because voting is how we protect each other. Voting is how we protect the most vulnerable amongst us. Right. So please, thank you so much, Reverend Barber and Reverend Liz and everyone who's on this call. You're all making a difference. And however I can be of service to you all and to our country, please don't hesitate to reach out. I think you all know where to find me.
Well, listen, we thank you. We see you in your engagement on social media and beyond. And it is important for all of us to be together. That's the key to Poor People's Campaign. Liz is real clear to remind us we are all called to be ambulance drivers. And we're all together, some poor, some moral leaders, some activists, some advocates, some low wealth. In fact, the numbers actually, the startlingness of the numbers should actually startle us and push us into action. Because if you actually use what Sally Gupta Barnes has shown us, the so-called supplemental income measurement, it's over 50% of our children are in poverty and low wealth. Over 50%.
And the thing is we have to remember, I think it's so important that we remember that although the numbers are staggering,
right,
each one of those people have their own stories.
Every one of them. That's right.
Every single one of them.
That's right.
And their lives impact their circles, and those circles impact their communities, and our communities impact everyone. So we have to remember that, because we can get overwhelmed with the numbers, but each one of those people has their own story to tell.
Well, one of the things we did, Elisa, we found out that in this movement, we had to stop people from being underwhelmed, because they needed to be saying, and then the other thing, but then you turn the numbers. because as I said earlier, but that means that we're 1/3 of the voting population. That it shouldn't be, but since it is, it means 1/3 of us should be voting about an agenda to lift everybody, because we know personally what it's like. You know, those numbers should challenge us. Those numbers should say there are more of us than there are of the extremists. Those numbers should say that we cannot survive as a nation when nearly 50% of people are poor and low wealth, but that those numbers also represent power. And so that's why we're so glad to have you on. You know, another thing I would like to say, and I'm trying to say this real carefully because I don't want to offend anybody, but I think if people know me, they'll know. You know, yes, the women's piece and Roe v. Wade is that, you know, the cases that could come before the Supreme Court. But let me tell you what we got to fight that. And the LGBTQ things, I've been right there. But let me tell you what we know about this current person they're stacking on the Supreme Court rather than passing the stimulus. And I want to go to my brother Whitman. We know that she ruled against overtime pay. We don't have to guess on that. We know that she said if you call somebody a nigger in the workplace, it's not a hostile environment. We know that she's been wrong on voting rights. We know that. We know that 95% of her rulings have been for corporations, treating corporations like people and people like things. So just if, you know, we wonder what she may do, but we already know what she has.
That's
done.
right.
And we already know she would not give an answer on Brown, on voting rights, on she's been anti-labor rights. And so for that person to be, and an originalist, here's the last thing I want to say, because we do have to run. You know, she says, I'm an originalist, I'm an originalist. But the question is, you're an originalist to which Constitution? The 1787 Constitution that didn't have the 13th, 14th, the 15th Amendment, and the 19th Amendment, or the post 1868 Amendment? These are serious questions before us, and the people who are making these decisions come from the least popular states, but they also come from the states where if poor and low wealth people organize and vote, they have the numbers to change who sits in these seats. So that's why I'm glad you came on.
I just want to say one thing, which is, and then I know you want to get to Bradley Whitford, who's one of my favorite people.
And I got three more people that we got to get on.
But here's the thing that we have to remember: we cannot continue to be reactionary when it comes to the Supreme Court. We have to vote based on the fact that this has been the GOP's agenda for the last 25 years, is to take over the courts so that they can, you know, continue their putting forth their hurtful policies so that they can get judgments in their favor. This has always been part of their plan. So we can't continue to be reactionary. And, you know, every time we have to start laying the groundwork now. We have to start connecting elections with the Supreme Court, and make people see that these two things are interchangeable, and you cannot separate them. So again, I appreciate your time.
Let's have that conversation. And when we have it, we're going to talk about how there's no way you can do that without having poor people at the center of it, because it's the only way to expand the electorate. And let's talk about really how they've been after this ever since 1876 to control the court, and how it traces back to race and class and labor rights and women's rights. And what we got to do is get all these folks who are fighting for all these rights individually to come together and fight them together, and understand that 90% of what's happening is happening in states, from states where if poor and low wealth people are organized, this is why I criticize Democrats, are organized and had been organized for the last few years, these states don't have to send the people they're sending into the Senate to then vote like they're voting. We're going to have that conversation. We're going to come back at you, but thank you so much. So much. We love you, and we're in this battle for the long haul.
God bless you all. God bless you all. Thank you for this opportunity.
Bradley, we believe that you might be a prophetic sign. You know, we're C3. I can't really tell people who to vote for and carrying on, but they tell me you used to hang out on the West Wing. And they tell me in the movies that sometimes you have a scene change. And America, we America, we hoping for a scene change. I like the beard too, man. But talk to folk all over the country. And Liz, come on and say hello to Bradley Whitford on the West Wing. You know, Liz Theo Harris is a powerful sister. Where is she? Can I see her?
I'm right here. I'm right here.
Hey, there she is.
And we're glad to have you, Bradley.
And so, Bradley, I'm going to step off. I've got to move something, but Liz is going to take us the rest of the way.
Oh, great.
To the end of the program. But look, we're glad that you're on when we get back in the street, you know, because we had planned to have this massive poor people.
I want to see you in D.C., yeah.
Okay. We're going to hold you to that now.
Okay.
When we're in the street, we want you with us. Okay? All right. Talk to us today all over the nation.
Okay. First of all, I want to say to Sarah from Mississippi, not only do you speak beautifully and articulately, I think you should run for office. And and I think that you're an example. I think what you're feeling now is something in these disorienting times that is very important. And it's the idea that action is the antidote to despair. I was raised Quaker. I ended up being part of an Episcopal church community in California. And there's a guy there, George Regas, who said something that has really driven me through all my political involvement. And he said that politics is the way you create your moral vision. Governance is the way you create your moral vision. And there's a tendency, especially in the community where I come from, to think it's culture. And culture is incredibly important. But will and grace will not help you if you have a pre-existing condition. And the right understands, as Alyssa was just saying, the right understands this. And because they're defending basically a business agenda, I mean, it really is disorienting. The sort of Orwellian basis for all Republican economic policy seems to be that the rich are victims at a time when income disparity is accelerating. So I want everybody to engage. I want people to vote early. I want to do whatever we can. Clearly, Judge Barrett is someone who, as the Reverend said, is going to make the distance between the rich and the poor and the horrible disparities in this country worse. We need to do whatever we can to stop that. We need to get people to vote. We need them to vote early. I am from Wisconsin. I have watched with horror as over the last decades, the Koch brothers have pumped money in there basically to suppress the vote. And in the last election, Trump won by, I believe, 22,000. I think 30,000 voted for Jill Stein, 100,000 voted for the Libertarian guy, and at least 100,000 people who wanted to vote in Wisconsin were disenfranchised because of Republican chicanery. The majority of those people were the African-American community in Milwaukee, quite frankly. And it was very upsetting to me in the wake and the shock of the election that the entire discussion was how have we alienated the white working middle class, when actually we lost the election not because of that, but because of a decades-long active strategy by the Republicans to suppress the vote. We need everybody to get out and vote. I'm doing calls. I'm trying to donate as much as I can. I think it's a very disorienting time in this country for all of us who care about justice and equal opportunity in this country. I'm sort of joking when I say it feels like an Al-Anon situation, like daddies crazy. And we're forced into a relationship with the person who is our president. And, you know, mommy, Lindsey Graham, is going, come on, kids, get in the van. And we're like, no, he's actually killing us. I don't mean to make light of it, but it's really disorienting. I am very hopeful. I feel people are engaged. I feel like this horrible virus, the way it has feasted on the most vulnerable among us, is laying bare the obscenity of the lack of access to healthcare and the wealth inequality in this country. So I'm angry, I'm inspired, and I'm really hopeful. And I just want everybody out there to vote, get your friends to vote. Young people, you need to understand your future is an act of your own creation. And this is how you do it. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. We really appreciate and the word obscenity, the obscenity of the lack of healthcare, the obscenity of paying essential workers expendable wages, and for sure calling out these, you know, states that have racist voter suppression laws that have been enacted that have really disenfranchised millions of people across this country. But we know, as we said at the beginning of this broadcast, at the beginning of this Moral Monday, that if they weren't so afraid of poor and low income people across racial, across geographic lines voting together, then they wouldn't be trying to steal our vote. And so I want to remind folks, and thank you so much for being here, Bradley Whitford. I want to remind folks that we have about 5 more people, powerful leaders from all across the country, who are here because we need a just relief package, because we need to turn out and organize, because we need folks to do more. And remember, we need to be flooding those phone lines, McConnell's phone line, and the senators across the country with our calls, and we need to show up. And so I'm going to have Leonard Riley out of South Carolina, who's been organizing for just years, powerful longshoremen, talk to us a little bit about what's going on in South Carolina, why people must organize, why we're rising up and voting, and what it looks like to be building this movement.
Good evening, all. I'm glad to be with you all. I'm so inspired by the messages that I've been hearing. I want to use most of the time to just point to some things that are very obvious because they're going on all across the country. In Charleston, in South Carolina, Charleston, by the way, is one of the most sought after cities, beautiful and all of that. Let's talk about the irony there and the irony in South Carolina. We are creating new homeless people every day. We are creating new poor people every day, people that had a job, saw themselves as middle class, and now because of this pandemic and the politics, they find themselves applying for food stamps. The eviction rate is off the chain.
That's right.
I find myself, along with some of my co-activists, fighting every day to keep people in their apartments. Mortgages are overdue. Foreclosures are raging. We got homeless people that don't have health care. We got people with homes that don't have health care. We need health care for all. And we have to be mindful of these things when we go to the polls. But before we get to the polls, we got to save their lives. We need a stimulus package like 3 months ago, a new one, like 3 months ago. We got our largest employers in South Carolina and Charleston, like MUSC and Boeing, that laid off people, furloughed people for a while. Now they've sent them additional notes. You are not coming back. We've got to address all of this. I'm fortunate. I'm a longshoreman. If we stop, the world trade stops. And we're willing to lend our voice and our platform to the struggle. we are going to put pressure on our senator. We circled his office last week. We've been to his office this week, and we're going to keep going. No matter what the outcome of the election is, I would prefer it be different, but we're going to keep placing demands on them. And we have got to organize people in voting. We have to participate. Make sure they return the ballots that sent to their home. Make sure they fill it out appropriately so they don't have a reason to reject the ballot. You know, there's so much we could do. Guess what? We outnumber them. There are way more poor people in the world than rich people. There are people that's suffering. Their suffering has been exaggerated by this pandemic. We have the power. We just have to use it now. The voting power, the moral power to change things.
That's right.
We have to commit ourselves to doing that. We are committed in South Carolina. If you ride by your senator's office, and you should, drop him a line, blow his phone up, insist on the things that we know that needs to change. There's disparity in medical treatment.
That's right.
Poor people don't have health care. And there's a double jeopardy there, because if you're the wrong hue, you're not going to be high on the priority list for who receives treatment. Just telling it like it is. This should not be, not in the richest country in the history of the world, what I heard. They're just not rich in moral thinking. But we have the number. We can outnumber them. We can outpower them. We can outact them. And I'd like to drop one more thing. And there's a ton of things I'd like to drop. When this election is done, I personally think the most important election starts locally. So we have to participate in those. But when this national election is done, when it's won, and if anybody in there don't want to live by what has been democratically done, then it shouldn't be business as usual in this country for no worker. We should be, if someone tried to derail this fragile democracy, because right now it's at a vulnerable point. If somebody's tried to bully the election, we should not be content, eat your dinner and then go to sleep and think about the job. It should not be business as usual. So I encourage us, we are powerful when we come together. Let's exercise that power. Let's tell Mitch and what's his first name? Trump, that it's unacceptable.
That's right.
The direction this country is headed. Thank you, and stay in the fight, stay in the struggle. We can win, and we will win.
That's right. We can win and we will win. And the power of people coming together, voting together, mobilizing together. We're going to go to Shelby Fedrenbacher in Kansas. When Brother Riley was talking about healthcare, when he's talking about, all of these disparities. Shelby, will you tell us what's going on in Kansas and why you and your family are involved in this work?
So here in Kansas, we still are one of the few states who has not expanded Medicaid. First off, we are in a healthcare crisis in Kansas. There are tons of people who are still not getting the care that they need. I'm 29 years old and I am still in the Medicaid gap where I cannot afford private health insurance, but I don't qualify for Medicaid. And because Kansas hasn't expanded, that hasn't been an option for me. In fact, throughout my whole life, the only healthcare that I have ever had access to was healthcare that was limited to life-saving measures only. And that was when I was a teen. I grew up in generational poverty, like my youngest childhood memories was, learning how to make ramen by myself because my mom worked 3 jobs, and explaining to my teachers why I wasn't getting sleep because I was cleaning things with my mom until midnight, like that was my life as a child. And I went on to get diagnosed with a number of uterine difficulties because I didn't get treated in time. I lived in pain and I suffered because we didn't go to the doctor unless we for sure were dying. And by the time it got to the point where I went to the doctor, they told me, you're kind of out of luck. Like you have these, deformities in your uterus, and it was just going to be a big problem. And it was a pre-existing condition, and that was when I was a child. And then for some reason, like some miracle, I guess, I went on to have 4 children as an adult. But last year I got diagnosed with stage 4 uterine cancer. And this was right before COVID struck. And I got told that I had about 3 months to come up with a $4,000 down payment, or else I would not be getting life-saving treatment for that cancer. And I don't have health insurance. And so that was the situation I was put in. And honestly, I resigned myself to die. And in the richest nation in the world, we should not resign ourselves to die because we can't afford to treat our cancer. Like, it's ridiculous. So I just was so depressed. I would look at my 4 children every day and just decide, I'm sorry, I'm just going to die as peacefully as I can. I don't know what else to do here. And I was very, very lucky that I had a community who pulled together a crowd-funded cancer treatment for me without me knowing. But not everyone gets that lucky. I was lucky. I had a community who was able to pull together money, and they were able to bring me a check to my door and tell me, no, girl, you're going to live. And then because of all of that, I got treatment right before COVID struck, and was told that if I, get COVID, I'm going to die because I just went through a year of radiation. I just went and got, a cancer treatment. And my doctor flat out told me COVID will be the final straw, and that for sure will kill you because we don't even know if the cancer's gone fully. And at 29, I'm forced to basically choose whether I'm going to go provide for my children and go to work and, hopefully not get COVID. So I hopefully don't die after trying to survive this cancer treatment, or whether I'm going to protect my health and stay home, but be in severe poverty more so. And so it's not okay to play politics with people's lives. And that's what our Senate here in Kansas is doing. That's what our Senate in the nation is doing. They're playing politics with our lives. They're denying health care when they are the reason we are in the positions we are in to begin with. They have not treated the poverty that's in our nation, and then that poverty creates pre-existing conditions, which create healthcare crisis that we can't get any help for, because the ACA getting repealed would take away any ability for me to ever get health insurance. And here we are then playing politics,
That's right. That's right. And we said at the beginning of this gathering, we need this nation to mourn the situation you're in. Mourn the situation millions that people are in, and then take that mourning and organize, which is just what you've been doing for some time now, Shelby, both organizing the doctors and organizing your community, and then organizing with this Poor People's Campaign. And it's so powerful. We know that we're the people who, our backs are against the wall, but we're pushing and we're organizing and we're fighting and we're going to win. And so I know also that when your story resonates a lot with who's coming next, Nicole Hill out of Detroit. And so Nicole, will you tell us why you're a part of this, why you're calling us to call our senators, call McConnell's office, and keep on rising up and voting and mobilizing and organizing? I think you're on mute though, Nicole. I still can't hear you. I don't know what's up. I can see you though. Nope. I don't know. Nope, I still can't hear you.
We go to Shelley or to Danita and come back.
Great. We'll work on it, Nicole, and then yeah. So Danita, you have someone's story to read from Texas, and if you could share how that resonates at the same time with all of these stories we're hearing.
All right, Reverend Liz, I'm going to read a story in her own words, a statement in her own words, how the inactions of our state, local, and federal government are playing out in the lives of Texans. And her name is Shelley. And I'm reading Shelley's story because Shelley has a fear of losing a part-time job just to report on the atrocities that have happened to her and her family. COVID-19 hit my family hard financially, emotionally, and physically. In March, I lost my job as a contract therapeutic musician due to COVID-19. I had worked for these medical facilities for nearly 20 years. This was a huge blow financially. My husband is disabled with severe COPD, has limited mobility, and must be on an oxygen machine to survive. He has quite a few medical expenses each month. We've been able to survive because of money and savings. But by the end of the year, though, I'm not sure what's going to happen to us. In late March, my sister-in-law's father contracted COVID-19 and died from the disease on his birthday, April 1st. He was a precious member of our family. Because of COVID-19, we were not able to have a proper funeral. My sister-in-law contracted COVID-19 in late March and was very, very sick. She did survive, thank God, but is still suffering symptoms from the disease, such as hair loss, fatigue, lesions on her arm, and lack of taste and smell. In April, I lost a dear coworker to COVID-19, a therapist at the hospital where I had worked. My nephew contracted COVID-19 in late September and has thankfully recovered. The emotional toll has been great. I've had a terrible time focusing. I'm struggling with depression, and I've had moments of panic. And so with Shelley's story and her statement, it resonates with everything that everyone has said here and discussed here. How in the richest country in the nation are people having to decide whether or not they go to work, feed their family, or avoid an illness that will probably bankrupt them? This is not a country that's designed for the poor. This is a country that's designed for the wealthy to not only to continue to grow their wealth, but to remain dominant over the poor and low income. This is not a country that we need to, that is prosperous for us all. And it's important that we call, that all my fellow Texans and that all my fellow Poor People Campaign members and that everyone across this nation reach out to your senators. Let it be known that you will no longer sit and be quiet, but you're standing for the right to live.
Thank you so much, Danita, and to Shelley for those words. Nicole, we're gonna go to you and hear what's happening in Michigan, how it's connected to what's happening in Texas, how it's connected to what's happening in Kansas and Mississippi and Kentucky, and we're glad to have you here with us.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you sound great.
Okay, good. Okay, again, thank you for having me, Reverend Liz, Reverend Dr. Barbara. I appreciate this opportunity as an impacted person to speak and hopefully get people who don't understand what's going on to really grasp the concept of what's really happening in America right now. I personally can attest to the fact that just since COVID, I've lost 15 people to COVID. And what shocked me the most was only 2 of them fit into that criteria of what they said were the people dying from COVID. They were over 60. Everyone else was 50 and under. And the youngest person that passed away from it was just 30 years old. And when I think about 53,000 plus people, I don't think I've met 53,000 people in 1 week, let alone one day. Just let that sit there and absorb 53,000 plus people dying per day in a country that touts and brags about being a superpower of the world and being one of the richest countries, if not the richest country in the world. And we just let people die by the wayside as if they're dispensable. We don't think about families, and just to fathom that, it blows my mind completely. I don't even know how to conceptualize that at all. It's just too far fathoming for me. And to sit here in Michigan and look at how the governor put in an executive order, and I guess I don't want to call them Proud Boys because I don't think they have anything to be proud of. I'll say terrorists, domestic terrorists, forced the Supreme Court or colluded with the Supreme Court into overturning her executive order, means that it's not just going to be 53,000 people per day dying anymore. That number is going to dramatically increase because all these people who were living with water insecurity in the Great Lakes states are now going to be getting shut off again, which means they're going to have water. They're not going to have running water in their homes. They're going to be subject to all types of waterborne illnesses, and they're doing it in the midst of COVID. How many more people have to die for us to be deemed valuable? We are American citizens. We are tax-paying citizens. We are hardworking people. I have not met any person in all of the work that I've done that was a directly impacted person that was not working as hard as they could to provide for themselves and their families. And it's shameful. It's downright shameful the way that our most vulnerable people are treated in this country. I have a father-in-law that has not seen a single solitary soul since March, and he's in a nursing home and he has dementia. He doesn't know if we forgot about him. He doesn't know what's going on because he's not capable of using a telephone either.
Yeah.
And it's beginning to get too much. And the thing is right now, I'm in the process of working with youth teams to get out the vote. And it frightens me because I meet people every day who have this nonchalant attitude of, why should I vote? My vote doesn't matter, or everybody else is voting. Why should I vote? Everyone has to get out to the polls. You know how they used to have this slogan with a car company, and it said, we will give anybody $1,000 for their trade-in if you have to push, pull, or drag it in. We need to take that same mentality when we head to the polls. If I have to push you there, if I have to pull you there, if I have to drag you there, if I have to put you in the back of a radio flyer wagon and get you there, we need to get people out to the polls. And we need to stress the importance of asserting our right as Americans to vote. That is the only way we're going to make any policy change, is to vote. But not only that, but we also have to learn to stand up, because I feel like this, and someone said it earlier, like when you can't take it anymore, you stand up and you fight. I'm like that bear that's trying to hibernate, and 53,000 plus people a day, there's a poke. Shutting off water to vulnerable people, there's a poke. Contaminating water that people drink, there's a poke. Not giving people a living wage, another poke. I'm tired of getting poked. I'm ready to get up and start swiping. And that's
we heard it. We heard it from Nicole. We're gonna get up and start swiping, and indeed, we're gonna get up and start swiping. I mean, indeed, there's been 220,000 people that have died from COVID, and 53,000 a day fallen into poverty. What we heard from Reverend Barber and from others, when you fall into poverty, you're way more likely to die. You're way more likely to get sick. It's the beginning of more and more problems going on in our lives, and so we have been poked, and we are going to start swiping. Early voting has started in some places, and that's one way to swipe. Voting on election day is another way to swipe, and we thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us. We have one more powerful leader from the great Commonwealth, where wealth is not very much in common, of Pennsylvania, Terrell Turner out of New York, Pennsylvania. Will you tell us what's going on in Pennsylvania, why you're a part of this work, and why we need a just stimulus, why we need to be pushing our senators, why we need to be rising up and organizing and voting?
Yeah, we need to push everybody that can be pushed, including each other. Here in Pennsylvania, in the midst of this global pandemic, something that's affecting our state and our country right now, and in the midst of it being an overall spike in Pennsylvania, we've had hospitals closed down, and you wouldn't believe it's happening until you see it happen. So in the midst of hospitals closing down, we had one in particular that converted over, once they moved, they converted to a COVID testing site. But all it takes is a few real estate investors to come in and say they want the property and play their games with the politicians and do eminent domain in order to take it over. And in the midst of a pandemic, that's just what you don't do. We have our priorities screwed up as a nation, as a state, as a Commonwealth, as a people. And one of the issues that, I see and it's overwhelming is that even before COVID, we had a situation where over half the country couldn't afford a $500 emergency. We had 30 million people who had inadequate healthcare or didn't have healthcare at all. So with those things just being further exacerbated by a global pandemic, where do you think that leaves us? It leaves us in a very dire situation. I have a mom that lives it's moved to another state. And because she's in another state, now she's out of network and she can't see the healthcare provider she needs to see. But what is in network, out of network when you need help? Healthcare should be free at the point of delivery. You need healthcare, you get it. And, we all take care of each other that way. But, I do want to talk to, I'm 33 years old. I'm a millennial, and to all those who are of my age group and under, trust me, I completely understand where you're coming from. I do know that every institution that was sold to us as a way of meritocracy and the way it's perceived in this country has crumbled under our feet and has been by design. We were sold bad goods. And while voting is important, what's more important is what you do and what you do before and what you do after you vote. Politicians are not going to do what we need them to do. They have to be pushed. And we also have to understand that the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act were both approved under a racist president. LBJ did not want to do that. He did it because the immense pressure from the populace moved him into that position. It wasn't something he wanted to do, it's something we forced him to do. And that's what we have to do again. So, and for people who still may feel like they can sit it out, I would say this: there are plenty of down ballot races. There are things that are affecting what's happening around the corner and in your neighborhood that you can have a direct impact on. So you get involved, you get it done, and you become the change you want to see.
Thank you so much. That is a powerful, powerful message for us to be closing on, that we indeed can be the change that we want to see. And in fact, this is what gives me hope, what gives me energy, is the stories and the solutions that are coming out of everybody here in this Poor People's Campaign, all of the folks that shared powerful stories and powerful witness to why we need to stand up and fight. And so I want us to know that we're going to move forward together, not one step back, that that we know that people have been hurting our people for far too long, and we're not going to be silent. We're rising up, we're mobilizing, we're organizing, we're registering, we're educating. There is still time to join the MORE campaign. You can go to vote.poorpeoplescampaign.org to find out more about doing texting banking, phone banking, all kinds of turning out people. There are folks that are working on socially distanced, rise to the polls, all kinds of powerful work that's happening as we get to this really important election. We have folks that are doing poll monitoring, making sure that we're protecting the votes as they come in, as people try to go out there and make them heard. And indeed, we are still asking people, like Reverend Casimir put out at the beginning of this call, we need folks to be finding 10 and bringing 10 to the polls with you. Taking a more prophetic pledge to do so. And so I want to thank everybody. We have powerful leaders that have been with us today. We're gonna close out with the song that we opened with, which is "Cause Ain't Nobody Gonna Turn Us Around." We're going to keep on fighting. We're going to keep on praying. We're going to keep on marching. We're going to keep on finding each other and community in each other as we build a powerful movement. So thank you all for being here. Make sure there's still time to call McConnell's office. There is still time to call your senator's office. If you don't do it today, you can do it tomorrow. You can do it the next day, and make sure that you're a part of this movement while we rise up and we vote and we keep on organizing a massive transformative change in this nation, because we know it's in the hands, the key is in the hands of poor and low-income people coming together with moral leaders and advocates and activists and artists and actors and everybody to make this power structure say yes. Say yes to healthcare, say yes to living wage jobs, say yes to voting rights, say yes to education, and no to all the things that are demeaning and degrading all of our lives. And so it doesn't have to be this way. And we know that we have the power to change it. And I hope that you're as inspired as I am by the leaders that have been with us today, because if folk here through everything, through all the loss, through all the sickness, through all the hardship, are able to still stand up and organize and come out and vote, then everyone in this nation that is eligible can. And so ain't nobody gonna turn us around. Forward together, not one step back.
Turn me around.